that interest has also resulted in conflict and human suffering that persists. In recent years, the United States' humanitarian efforts to curb violence and bring peace to Congo have been significant. However, these efforts, on top of international efforts, have not brought the intended goal of building a lasting and durable peace. The elections to take place on December 23rd, 2018, are meant to be historical. They could result in the first peaceful transfer of power from one elected president to another, but I'm cautious to say they could. Because we're less than a month away from Election Day, I fear that violence may erupt in the run-up to elections or in the aftermath. I'm hopeful that no violence occurs and that the will of the people is allowed, and they elect a new president, members of the National Assembly and provincial assemblies. It's the responsibility of Congolese authorities to guarantee free and fair elections. The Election Commission, commonly referred to as the French acronym CENI, has had 2 extra years, as Tony said, to prepare for these elections, meant to be held in 2016. The Senate has had 2 years to build trust in a discredited institution after disputed 2011 elections. To be fair, the Senate is under immense pressure to manage an election in a country the size of the United States east of the Mississippi. But they seem to have chosen a difficult path to rebuild confidence in the process. Yes, more people have been registered for elections than ever before, and Senate should be commended for that feat. However, the choice of using electronic voting in a country with very little electricity is questionable at best, since paper ballots are the norm and have been used in the past. As I stated previously, it's ultimately the responsibility of the Congolese government to guarantee credible elections. But knowing that the credibility of the election itself is under question, the United States is duty-bound to query the legitimacy of the democratic process. In fact, during the past 5 years, the Obama and Trump administrations have actively engaged on the human rights and electoral situation in Congo. The Obama administration appointed 2 special envoys for the Great Lakes region, Senator Russ Feingold and former Congressman Tom Perriello. In just the past few weeks, the Trump administration appointed Dr. Peter Pham as the new special envoy to the region. Dr. Pham, Peter, is a respected scholar of African politics, and his appointment is a welcome one. Additionally, the United States ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has been outspoken about the process, and many give her credit, good or bad, for securing an actual date for these elections. She visited Congo in 2017, has held many discussions at the Security Council during the past year, continuing to put pressure on the Congolese government to hold the elections this year. Her visit and consistent message to the Congolese authorities have also been echoed on Capitol Hill, the House of Representatives and Senate, that have also sent clear messages to the Congolese people that they support their human rights to choose their leaders and respect in a peaceful, transparent, and credible process. This hearing today shows that. Current bipartisan legislation introduced by Representatives Chris Smith, Karen Bass, Ed Royce, and Elliot Engel shows the House supports democracy and accountability in the DRC. The Senate has also passed resolutions on maintaining the need for the United States to remain actively engaged. Finally, elections will take place in December or in the near future, if they are delayed. The executive and legislative branches of the U.S. government have made expectations clear to the Congolese government. The United States leaders should continue to watch Congo closely and uphold its responsibility, and to again quote Senator McCain, to champion human rights in all places, for all people, at all times.
Thank you, Alexis, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here, speaking in this forum here, the Tom Lantos Commission, Human Rights Commission. It's also humbling to talk about DRC because, yet again, the DRC is grappling with a crisis. I will describe it, I think my colleagues have already kind of painted it a little bit. I just want to kind of contextualize a little further. So what we're dealing with is bank holdup, is a robbery of a bank. When the robber has turned off the security camera, blocked up all the roads so that the police cannot come in. Yeah, we don't want observers, we don't want the UN, we don't want anybody who can possibly help shed light on this initiative to join us. So the robber wants free rein on the entire operation. And then it's up to us to decide if we want to let it happen or not. So that's kind of the context. in terms of what the Electoral Commission and the government is intending to do. My colleagues have already eloquently described that. So I just want to talk about the opposition, about 2 or 3 or 4 elements here. The opposition met in Geneva. Of course, we all follow that, what happened in Geneva. On one level, it was a big success in the sense that they actually got together and met. On another level, it was disappointing because 2 of the tenors of the opposition decided to withdraw the signatures. But be that as it may, the fact that they met is very significant. And the fact that the segment that stayed, the faction that stayed, the Lamuka faction, appointed somebody who was very credible when you consider the mandate that has been given, which is to fight this calamity, this perversion of parody of elections. The other group, of course, is the Cap Changement. It's Kamere and Felix Tshisekedi meeting in Nairobi and having their own agreement. However you look at this is still a positive development. Just look at how much people they mobilize when they get home. If you doubt about what's happening in terms of Congolese being mobilized, look at those images. They're not new, they happen with Mvemba when he returned, they happen with Tshisekedi Père when he returned. So the yearning is there, it's incarnate, you can see it. So if you still have not noticed that, then you need to look again. So now we have another element with this. So on one level, politically, people want the elections. Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. That's why you see all these crowds and everything else you see. Technically, you've heard my colleague describe the situation. It's not clear if the election actually can take place in the form that the Electoral Commission and everybody is expecting. Be that as it may, also on that front, because the people absolutely want the elections, whether they happen on the 23rd or another day, they will have to happen. And when they do, the international community has a role to play. What role should we play in this case? Suppose, I'm a writer, let's play a little bit of a fiction exercise here. Suppose actually they happen on the 23rd. Then there's room for international organization, other groups to get involved here. And one area will be, JT mentioned this, transmission of votes. What we know is that the government will probably block all the system. Vodacom will be shut down, the internet will be shut down, all the stuff. But I think the world can provide training for party agent, training for observers, and also the technical skill, equipment. I mean, we know that there are equipment that allow people to transmit information even when the internet is shut down. So we need to start exploring those areas where we can actually engage, even though the international observers may not be present. But how do we equip, how do we empower those are on the field? Training, equipment as 2 areas that where we can play a role. So that's on the political side. The voting machine being what it is, I know there is also technical know-how in terms of trying to debunk the mystery of the cheating that goes with it. So I think groups like IFS and other technically savvy institutions can play a role in this area. There is a cynicism on the international community side, which is unfortunate. Because when you talk to diplomats, on one level you hear the old, pretty tired argument now that the Congolese cannot mobilize. We don't see them in the street. We want them to do this, the opposition that. They've done all that. I'm not sure what you want to ask of people. If you start looking in 2015, 2016, 2017, Kabila government was forced to attack people in churches, in services. We allowed that to continue. So I'm not sure what the diplomatic community, the international community want of Congolese. I think that cynicism is actually sad if we're living in the 21st century and refuse to accompany the Congolese people, at least to recognize that. If we look at the masses that are mobilizing when these political leaders, all their rallies, these are bigger than what we saw in Burkina Faso. You know, and this happened again and again and again in DRC. So I'm not sure what further proof do we need that the people are committed to change. You can also look on the other side, people in the international community who believe that anything but Kabila will be okay. So as long as Kabila doesn't run again and Shadari wins, quote unquote, that will be okay. No, it will not be okay. Shadari is under international sanction for everything that we know, and it does not represent change. And if you doubt it, look at the crowds that he draws when he goes out. Right? And he has the entire machinery of the state behind them, and they cannot mobilize. There is a segment of politicians in the European Union who are now peddling a narrative that maybe the time has come to lift the sanction of the Congolese associate of Kabila, the like of Shadari and others. I admonish you who are here who work for the State Department, the US government, US Congress, to fully resist that and actually to stop that. I think the sanctions should remain in place, and like Tony said, actually more should be added. There is nothing that the Congolese, excuse me, the Congolese camp, the Kabila camp, Shadari and others have given us for us to even start contemplating the idea of lifting up those sanctions. Finally, the Congolese constitution is actually pretty impressive. And one area where it is impressive is Article 64, which says every Congolese has the right to stop any subversion of the constitution. And that's what the Congolese are doing peacefully for now. It is also legal and constitutional, accepted and acceptable in the Congolese constitution for people to take up arms, to subvert that provision. That perversion of the Constitution. So it's up to us. If we want to continue to be cynical and wait until they mobilize further and take up arms, that is also in the works. There are people actually who are considering that seriously. So we are at the crossroads here to decide whether we're going to support the Congolese people or continue to ask to move the goalposts for them in a way that is almost impossible. So I will leave it there, and just to say that if this election fails, then the most credible option will be a transition without Kabila, and that can take all kinds of forms. Probably form that will not be able to control or to usher. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I want to take a quick moderator prerogative to ask an opening question, and then we'll turn to some questions from the audience within the time that we have. So I want to pick up on something that a couple of the panelists mentioned, which is the option to use sanctions perhaps after the elections, or additional sanctions designations perhaps after the elections. I wonder if we could broaden that discussion to sort of other tools, particularly congressional tools, that might be useful in responding to whatever scenario we think might emerge. And Tony made the point that, regardless of sort of what happens or doesn't happen on December 23rd, we're talking about a situation that will either be sort of, let's say, a difficult, imperfect to say the least, election process, possibly with some amount of violent disarray or violent contestation following it, or possibly a situation of electoral delay, or sort of, in another bad case scenario, prolonged electoral delay. Looking at the congressional calendar, we're talking about these events coinciding with a new Congress taking up their seats and sort of organizing the committee structure that will dominate, for the next 2 years. So I wonder if you could, if the panelists could just quickly tease out or throw out a couple of additional considerations for the audience here. Not to put anybody on the spot, but yeah, please go ahead.
No, I think that's a great question, Alexis. I'll stick with what one of my themes was. I don't think we're going to have anything credible occur on the 23rd. And I want to underscore points made by both Paul and Mvemba. Mvemba noted indirectly that the Congolese opposition remains nonviolent. This is one of their hallmarks and something extremely impressive about them. And something that should be supported by the United States. But they want results, as Mvemba said. They want to see free, fair elections. Mvemba and I observed the free and fair elections in 2006, and we saw it with our own eyes. The enthusiasm of Congolese in extremely rural areas, that's where we were. They wanted to vote in 2006, they wanted to vote in 2011, they've wanted to vote since 2016, they deserve that. Paul talked about the commitment of Senator McCain and of many in Congress to respect for human rights and the importance of free and fair elections. The Congolese government responds to pressure. There are representatives here from the State Department, they can talk better than I can, that many people, the special representatives that Paul referred to and others, have tried the sweet talk to President Kabila for years. Oh, please, preside over this and ride into the sunset and you will be a hero, you'll be recognized internationally, blah, blah, blah. It has had zero effect. Absolutely zero effect. Thinking right now that anything like that is going to have any effect on him now is a lunacy. I wish that one could go in and make a démarche and say something and he would go and change his mind. It's not going to happen. But he has responded to pressure. He's responded to internal pressure when people in the Congo took action starting in 2015. And he's responded to external pressure from the United States, the European Union, and others, including his neighbors in Africa, from the Angolans, Congo-Brazzaville, and other countries, when they've made it clear that certain action should be taken. So what I would say, Alexis, is that the focus has to be on giving the Congolese people a chance to vote in free, fair, credible elections. That's what has been the United States policy. That's what's been in all the bills and resolutions that the Congress has passed, including the one being considered today. But we have to be serious about it. We cannot slide off in a cynical direction that says, oh, yeah, the elections were terrible, but Kabila's leaving power, and this guy Shadari, he's not so bad, is it? I really want to associate myself with what Mvemba said. That's a terrible outcome. And it should be unacceptable to the United States Congress, and I hope to the administration. So I'd say the answer is just pressure, pressure, and more pressure until free, fair, credible, transparent elections occur. And there are people here, IRI, NDI, IFAS, others. We have the tools to help the Congolese if they're really committed to that. But the final point I'll say, going back to something I said earlier on, it is not going to happen under Kone Nanga and the leadership of the current Electoral Commission. I wish that were wrong. I wish that sometimes some subtle maneuver, but again, that has been tried. Offers of assistance by many actors around the world. It has not worked.
Any other?
Well, I think the first issue that has to come forward is there needs to be a constant stream of communication coming out of this community and certainly those working on the technical aspects of the election to provide Congress with strong data and information. I think when you look at the lobbyists and the others who move around Washington talking about, and you don't know who they're employed by, but they're talking about something about how wonderful elections are going to be. It's important to provide sobering figures. 80,000 polling units, 105,000 electronic voting machines, only 20,000 of which have arrived in the country so far, 40 million registered voters, almost 700 political parties. These are massive numbers. 3 elections have to occur on time in a single day. Providing that kind of context is going to be crucial to debunk any debate about what we're looking at here. We just came out of a very long, protracted period in Zimbabwe where we had a lot of discussions about what kind of election did we want in Zimbabwe post-Mugabe. Did we want an election better than the last one, or did we want a democratic, credible election? And the assessment that IRI and India made in their full observation was that Zimbabweans didn't meet the mark. They had a peaceful election day. They did all the things technically capable, but they didn't meet the mark. They didn't meet the mark because of what they did before elections and certainly what they did after elections. You have to look at this as a process. You have to judge it on the process. And that goes into our AU colleagues. So we have a lot of friends in the AU and a number of these multilateral institutions in Africa who are providing us, or also going to provide us with their perspective. It is the AU in its most recent meeting that called for the lifting of sanctions, to include lifting of sanctions on Shadari. When Congress is looking at what it's going to do to hold people accountable, one has to understand the enormous magnitude of what these elections mean for Africa and the U.S. agenda and the Western sort of view on democracy in Africa, which certainly is a counter view to perhaps what we see with the Chinese model and a number of other authoritarian, non-democratic models emerging in the continent. What do we want? What is our policy? Who are we going to support? And we've got to look at it from all of those factors. South Africa continues to be an important player in the process. They're providing some assistance to the CENI. But where are we in terms of triangulating the South Africans, the AU, the Angolans, into a place where they can help us provide some perspective for the regime and certainly those administering these elections. This is not going to be solved from Washington. It's going to require American diplomats to be on the ground in African capitals talking about these issues and bringing people together. Because it's going to be that zombie international election observation mission like we saw some of the zombies come out in Cameroon, those fake missions that existed. That's the thing now, by the way. So they will be there. I just saw a few on the ground in Nigeria, so look for them there too. It's a thing. And what we need to do is make sure if the zombies come out, where are we going to be in terms of providing our perspective and making sure that those comments are backed up with facts and details that set the scene and the reality before us.
Just quickly, just to carry on what JT and Tony said, pressure is important. The United States has a global Magnitsky, which has been used in Congo against Dan Gertler, basically the bagman for President Kabila. The use of executive orders that are still in the books that the Trump administration can use, Treasury Department. These are tools that can be used and should be underscored. And if the House bill passes and gets to the Senate and it passes, it'll just codify all of this so that the pressure will be considerable on Congo under our own U.S. laws. I would also say, and I'm kind of a broken record on this, it's just consistency in U.S. policy towards Congo. It goes up and down, ebbs and flows, depending on who's sitting at the, down on C Street at Foggy Bottom or whoever is in Kinshasa, the head of the embassy there. This is an important country to the United States, to the world, I think. It is the second largest country in Africa, the largest, I think, French-speaking country outside of France. I mean, you could go on and on about how big Congo is and how big and important it is, but our consistency in our efforts to support Congolese civil society, political parties of all sorts, just the political stability of Congo, and our own policies on that have lacked from one year to the next. So you look at Congo, which has 80 million people, maybe compare it to Nigeria or Ukraine, when you're talking about the way the United States invests in the democratic process in some of these countries, it's consistent. IRI has been there for 20 years. IRI, NDI, and all these other, democracy promotion organizations have been in Ukraine for 20 years plus. And you see, not that we need to take credit for any of that's owned by the people, but if you're going to be consistent, if you're going to be talking about